Okay, let's begin and daven that the zchut of our learning should protect our soldiers and Am Yisrael everywhere and all of the innocents and bring peace speedily in our time.
Amen.
And with that, I'm going to switch screens. Tov, so last time we started the Gemara and let's just remind ourselves what we were talking about. We started with the Mishnah that said Chatat v'Hashem v'Adai mechaprin. We understood a little bit more about uh, Asham Vadai versus Asham Talui. We saw the Rambam who said that there are five cases of Asham Vadai, and then there are other cases of Asham Talui, and so forth. Um, and now we looked at the beginning of the Gemara, which we'll just do a quick review of, and then we'll continue. But from the beginning of our Mishnah, what do we see? Chatan v'sham v'dai mechaprin, mita v'yom kippurim mechaprim imat tshuva. We said about that. Does anybody remember what we said about that? Mita v'yom kippurim mechaprim tshuva. We made a couple of comments on this line.
They're two separate conditions, mita, and they're not together.
They're not together. It's mita is mechaper and Yom Kippurim is mechaper, and then im hatshuva. Our assumption was that that refers back to each of those individual cases. That Mita is mechaper with tshuva, and Yom Kippurim is mechaper with tshuva. And so, because it's obvious that you would have to do tshuva before Mita, so then we understand Mita is mechaper imat tshuva means that if you did tshuva and then you died, that's mechaper. That gets you kapara. And similarly, if you did tshuva before Yom Kippurim, that would also give you kapara. And we haven't broken that down. Excuse me. We haven't yet broken this down to understand. Well, I'll just leave it at that. We also said tshuva mechaperet al averot kalot al aseh ve'al ta'aseh ve'al chamurot utoleh ad sheyavo yom kippurim v'yichaper. But what we see from the next line is what? That tshuva alone is mechaper on certain kinds of averot. So then, if that's true, so then we want to know, what do I mean we haven't broken down the second line? I want to know, what do I need Mita or Yom Kippurim for? Okay? In other words, if tshuva is mechaper on such and such chataim or such and such averot, so the line before said Mita v'yom kippurim mechaperim imat tshuva. So what is that mechaper for? Because I could have just done tshuva on averot kalot, and I don't need Mita or Yom Kippurim. And then the next line is V'al chamurot. So what about averot chamurot? Chamurot utoleh ad she'yavo Yom Kippurim yichaper. So what does that mean? What does that line mean?
I think it means that tshuva, one does tshuva for the avrot chamurot, and then upon the passing of Yom Kippur, then one's what's the word I'm looking for? There's kapara.
There's kapara. In other words, so this is the difference between averot kalot and averot chamurot. Chamurot is, again, it's a kitsur, right? It's leaving out the words, the word averot, right? So we said tshuva mechaper al averot kalot, etc. And the al chamurot, meaning the al averot chamurot. Utole, it suspends. What does what's being suspended?
Kapara.
Presumably, right. Presumably you could say kapara is being suspended. And what are the implications of kapara being suspended? In other words, if you don't have kapara, what good does it do you that kapara is suspended?
Onish would be suspended also, no?
Presumably, it means that your onesh, whatever punishment would be in accord with your avera, is also going to be suspended. So you're in a kind of limbo in those cases. But we still don't know exactly. So what did we learn from that? So Achamurot utoled shiavo Yom Kippurim yichaper. So now I can go back to the second line that said Mita v'Yom Kippurim mechaprim imatshuva. At least I know now Yom Kippurim is mechaper imatshuva. I could say that this has now been explained. That is, what does it mean Yom Kippurim is mechaper imatshuva? That if you did tshuva al hachamurot, that when Yom Kippurim comes, you will get kapara. So I could see this line about Al Chamurot. This is an explanation of that second line. Yom Kippurim is mechaperim atshuva. And what about mita? So I don't know. In other words, is what does it mean? Does it mean that mita has the same status as Yom Kippurim? That is, if you were over on Averot Chamurot and you did Tshuva, then you'll get Kapara, whichever comes first, either Mita or Yom Kippurim. Or is Mita there for other types of Averot? We have this question. We don't know exactly what Averot Kalot and Averot Chamurot are. Are those the only two categories of Averot? And so we don't know yet. We're still figuring it out. Okay, so what did we do last time? We looked at the beginning of the sugya. Okay, so Michael Werner, you were here first. You get to read. We're going to review what we did last week. Read from here, from Asham Vadai.
Asham Vadai in Asham Talui La. Vaha Kapara Ketiva Bai Be. Hanach Mechapri Kapara Gemucha. Asham Talui Enu Mechaper Kapara Gemucha.
Okay, so can you translate and explain this?
So Asham Vadai, no.
No. What does in mean?
Okay, presumably not no. Yes, I do recall that we discussed this, and it's and I just don't recall.
Okay, well, you should be able to figure out from context. Asham vadai in, asham talui lo. So
Oh, so no, I
in,
mean, actually, oh yeah, it would be yes. Of course, it means yes. Of course,
yeah.
yes.
Okay. All right.
um,
Okay. So
uh,
then,
uh, so
fine.
Sham Talui, no.
Okay. So explain what is the Gemara pointing out with these lines? Asham vadai in, asham talui lo. What's the Gemara saying?
It's saying that Sham Vadai gives kapara, and a Sham Talui does not.
Okay, where's the Gemara getting that from? How does the Gemara make that assertion?
Well, it doesn't really seem to be supported by the Mishnah, does it?
Why do you say that?
So there's no mention of a sham in the Mishnah, as I recall.
Okay, so we just read the Mishnah, and what was the first line of the Mishnah?
Oh, yes. Okay. Never mind. Um, you're being very tactful this evening.
Just calling him as
Hatat,
I can.
uh,
Yeah. What? Right. So what did the Mishnah say?
so Hatat Sham and Sham Badai give atonement, give kapara.
Okay. So what does the Gemara want to point out when it says Hasham vadai in Hasham talui lo? What is the Gemara saying?
That a Sham Badai does give a kapara, but a Sham Talui does not.
So how
So
does
it's a, and so our Mishnah only really spoke of a Sham Badai. And so it's asking, okay, well, we know that the Sham Badai does this, but what about the Sham Talui? No, it doesn't.
okay? And why does the Gemara say Hasham? On what basis does the Gemara say Hasham talui does not give kapara?
Um, well, I mean, it's the very nature of a
No,
Sham.
no,
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 no.
no. It's
Um,
just reading. The
oh
Gemara
no,
is
no,
just
no, okay,
reading
no,
the
no, no.
Mishnah.
Oh, then yeah, the Mishnah doesn't mention a Sham Talui.
And so, what's the implication?
It does not give kapara.
Yeah. In other words, if the Mishnah makes this assertion, chatat and asham vadai are mechaper, and it leaves out asham talui, so it implies that asham talui does not give kapara, that only asham vadai will give kapara. But then the Gemara says, "V'ha kapara ktiva be." What does that mean?
Um, isn't kapara written in this, i.e., doesn't the source text regarding a sham talui imply kapara? I mean, say that it gives kapara.
Say, no, not implies, it says ktiva
Says it
be,
gives kapara. Yes.
right? Ha kapara ktiva be. But look, regarding Asham Talui, the Torah says that it gives kapara. And last week we looked at the pasuk. It says v'chiper hakohen regarding Asham Talui. That somebody brings in Asham Talui, v'chiper hakohen. And here the Rashi quotes the pasuk ha kapara ktiv be v'chiper alav hakohen al shigegato asher shagag. Hasham Talui Ktiv. That's written regarding Hasham Talui. That's Meforash in the Torah. So, what's the Gemara's question? In other words, Hakapara Ktiva Bay, right? Is all this? This is all to ask a question. So, what's the question? What's the kasha?
So if the Mikra, says that a sham talui gives kapara, why is it not included in the Mishnah?
Excellent. That's the question. Why did the Mishnah leave out Hasham Talui? So, what's the answer? Hanach mechapre kapara gemura. Hasham talui eno mechaper kapara gemura. What does that mean? What does
So
Hanach mean?
the previous one,
Hanach means these.
these
Mechaper
these
kapara gemura.
yeah, so they grant complete atonement, complete kapara.
Uh-huh.
Uh,
What are the these that are being referred to?
Chatat and a sham vadai.
Very good. And Hasham talui eno mechaper kapara gemura. What does that mean?
A sham talui does not atone, does not give a complete kapara.
Right. What was the question and what's the answer?
So the question is, why is a sham talui not included in the Mishnah?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is that it does not, unlike chatat, the chatat and the sham vadai, it does not give complete kapara. It gives partial kapara.
Right. It gives some kind of less than complete kapara, and we don't know exactly what that means either. Rashi says, "Hasham telu eno mechaper kapara gemura, ela toleh lahagen alav min hayisurim." Right. It suspends him to protect him from yisurim, from
Afflictions.
Okay, that's good. I was going to say hardships. I think afflictions is good. Ad sheyivadalo shevadai chata. So it suspends him from getting afflictions until it will be made known to him that he definitely sinned, in which case v'yavi chatat, and then he'll bring a korban chatat, and then the korban chatat we know from our Mishnah is mechaper. Hachi alfinan la b'kritot. This is how we learn in Masechet Kritot. Okay, so that's a quick review of what we did last week. Let's move on. So Michael Schwab.
Shell,
Yes. Hi, Paul.
this Asham תלוי, כפרה גמורה, סליחה. This כפרה גמורה, is this a new concept which the Gemara invents, or does it, האם זה מופיע באיזה מקום אחר?
Okay, so first of all, you're right. I'll put your question more broadly. The question is, so what is kapara gemura and what is kapara sheina gemura? What does that mean?
Yeah.
What does that mean? So Rashi, so we understand. What do we understand from Rashi's comment about something that's what does Rashi think kapara sheina gemura is?
In a way, it is sort of a suspended sentence, i.e., the punishment is deferred until certain conditions are met, i.e., one realized that one in fact indeed did sin definitely, and then one brings a v'dai.
I would say almost exactly correct, and no, very good.
Kapara is the pendant of talui. Since you are not sure that you really did this chet, so the kapara is also suspended until you are sure. Maybe this is what they mean.
Yeah, that's what it means. In other words, so when do you bring an Asham Tadlui? When you're not sure if you did a chet. So that's not stam. It means that you know that you did some kind of an action which may have been a chet. That's right. Those are examples that we gave. So, like, just to repeat, one of the examples is somebody who sits down at the table and he has two plates in front of them, and one of them has shuman and one of them has chaylev. Chaylev, he's not allowed to eat. Shuman, he is allowed to eat, but he doesn't know which is which, and he eats from one of them. Now he doesn't know if he has to bring a korban chatat for having eaten chaylev, or maybe nothing at all because he ate shuman. So the Torah says, in such a case, you bring an asham talui until such time as you can determine whether either you will determine or someone else who may have knowledge will help you to determine until it can be determined whether or not you sinned. So you bring the Asham Talui, and you get this kapara sheina gemura. So it's a funny kind of term to say kapara sheina gemura, because
in fact kapara sheina gemura isn't even a kapara because there was no sin. You don't need a kapara if you didn't sin.
Right, exactly. In other words, it's the whole terminology here seems strange. In other words, kapara gemura is also, you could say, miutar, right? In other words, if you have kaparas, you have kapara. If you don't have kapara, you don't have kapara. But now the Gemara.
But if you didn't sin, you don't have kapara lo gemura because you don't need kapara at all because there was no sin.
Right. So the Torah introduces this idea of the Asham Talui because you may have sinned. So the Torah says, bring an Asham Talui. And then if you had sinned, in fact, and you didn't know for sure, so you didn't bring a Korban Chatat, so the Asham Talui will protect you from Yisurin. And if you didn't need to bring anything at all, so as we say in American English, no foul, no harm, right? In other words, so you didn't do anything bad, and so but it was you didn't do anything wrong by bringing an asham talui. In other words, so
It's
I'll
like a
just
bituach. It's like a bituach what you do.
kein bituach, kein bituach, and I'll just point out by saying, see, the Torah doesn't allow you to bring a korban chatat al safek. If you're not sure if you did a chet or not, you're not allowed to bring a korban chatat. That would be if you bring a korban chatat when you're not chayav, so then there isn't any inherent kedusha to the chatat, and then you're over on bringing chulin lazara. You're not allowed to bring something that isn't a sanctioned korban into the Beit HaMikdash to be slaughtered and so forth. That's an Aveirah. So the Torah introduces this idea of the Asham Talui. Now, here also, we could do some philosophizing. I don't think that's the right way to say the word, but philosophizing about this whole idea. In other words, the idea is I think a very interesting idea that you could argue then that the Torah is telling you to bring an Asham Talui for your benefit because maybe you're afraid that you'll get some kind of divine punishment unless you bring this Asham Talui. And you have to have some way of expressing your regret, and even if it's regret that you're not sure if you did something, the Torah introduces this as a tikkun, right? It's a way of fixing that. But the reason I say you could also have some philosophical discussion about it is maybe on another level, on a deeper level, that this is a reflection of either us as individuals. In other words, we're very concerned with our relationship to God. And we don't want to be in a state where maybe we transgressed some mitzvah and we don't have any way of rectifying it. So the Torah gives us some way of some kind of rectification. I don't know. I'm kind of just saying things.
I can ask something more on Yom Kippur. No, Yom Kippur in the Tachnun, you say Ashamnu Bagadnu. So you don't say I did it because maybe you are not sure that you did all these things. Maybe you did 50% of them or 20% of them. But if you take the whole Kahal Beyachad, so probably somebody did some of those things, which.
Okay, yeah, fair. And actually, we'll get into that. This is a theme actually of Rav Soloveitchik. It's one of his themes in his book Alat Tshuva, which I was recently zoche to find a copy of. It's been reprinted, so I got a copy. But this is one of his themes, and exactly that. In other words, I mean, this is a slight digression, but since you bring it up, on Yom Kippurim, so we say so we do the vidui both in the silent Amidah and in the Chazarat Hashatz. So why do we repeat it? Mazeh Kashur. So it's exactly for what you're saying, that the idea is that when you're doing it silently, then your thoughts are primarily on yourself. When you do it with the kahal, you're doing it in concert with kahal Yisrael. It's for everybody. The Rambam also talks about this in Hilchot Tshuva. So okay, I'm going to leave that for the moment. But yes, it's a very important concept. Okay, so now Michael Schwartz, you'll pick up from here. Inami.
Inami hanach ein acher mekaper kaparatan Asham Tului Acher Mekaper Kipartan Ditanan Chayavei Chatot Vashmot Vadain Sha'avar Alehem Yom HaKippurim Chayavim Ashemot Tuluim Piturin.
Okay, so can you translate for us, Inami?
Inami, alternatively, these, the Asham, the Chatat and the Asham Vadai, they delay, and they don't delay the Kapara.
No, so actually, Ein
Ein Acher,
Acher. There is nothing else.
Nothing else.
There's not an Acher. There's not something else.
Not something else from
That's Mechaper Kaparatan.
that brings atonement. I'm not
Yes,
sure.
yeah. No, okay.
Nothing else. So there's nothing else that brings atonement. And Asham Talui, there is something else that brings atonement. As we learn, one who is chayav, who's obligated in bringing a chatot or a asham vadai, and that it passed on them Yom Kippurim, they are obligated, or those that are obligated in asham talui are patur.
Okay.
You
All right. So I understand. Okay, it's okay. It's still a little bit unclear. So this is, as you introduced properly, inami, which means or also, or as you translated well, alternatively. In other words, alternatively to what?
to what we said before about kapara gamur and kapara ein gamura.
Or that, so okay, that was the last thing that we spoke about, but what was our original question?
Why is the asham talui not included in the initial list of in the Mishnah?
Right. So why was Hashem Talui left out of the list in the Mishnah, in the first line of the Mishnah, which implied that Hashem Talui is not mechaper? So we said, oh no, it is mechaper, but it's not the same kind of kapara. It's on a kapara gemura. Inami, or else, alternatively, maybe to answer our question about Hashem Talui not being included in the list, I could say the following. I could say, Hanach ein acher mechaper kaparatan. These, there isn't something after them which brings their kapara. That is, if I bring a korban chatat or bring an asham vadai, then what? They're mechaprim. There is no more, there isn't anything else that you need in order to gain kapara. But asham talui acher mechaper kaparatan. What does that mean?
It means that if you find out that in fact you did sin, you need to bring the chatat.
You would think so, but that's actually not what the Gemara means here, because the Gemara itself explains from the Mishnah. But what it means on the simple level is, right, there is something after the Asham Talui that will bring kapara, will bring actual kapara. Ditnan, as you learn in the Mishnah. So what did this? So we didn't learn this Mishnah, but what does the Mishnah say?
So those that are obligated in a chatat or a asham vadai that passes that Yom Kippur, they go through a Yom Kippur. They're chayavin, but I don't understand what they're obligated for.
So
Well,
if they did not bring if they're obligated to bring a chatat or an asham vadai, and they did not do so, if they go through Yom Kippur, they're still obligated to bring the respective korbanot.
Very good. Which means then Hashamot Tluyin Pturin means what?
In that case, if you go through Yom Kippur, you're patur from bringing a korban.
So what do you see? So what is the acher that's mechaper kaparatan shel Hasham vadai? What's the other thing that brings kapara for an Hasham talui? What brings
Yom
kapara?
Kippur. Yom Kippur.
Yom Kippur. So you also said what you said is true, that in principle, if it becomes known that you sinned, and you bring a korban chatat, so there is that kapara. That's a potential kapara that comes after bringing an Hasham talui, but that doesn't always happen. In other words, it could be that you'll never know. Maybe you'll never find out if you sinned, but you brought your Hasham talui. So the Mishnah says, if you brought your Hasham talui, then Yom Kippurim, in fact, is going to bring you kapara such that you are now patur from any other korban.
So
Right?
if you miss the Hasham Talui, Yom Kippur does. If you miss it because you didn't know, or maybe for some other reasons, then Yom Kippur mechaper. This is what
Yeah,
it means.
yeah, that's what it means. In other words, if chayav, as Michael Werner said, so if chayavei chatot v'hashamot v'dayin means people who were supposed to bring those things but didn't bring them, and then they go through Yom Kippurim, they're still chayav. Yom
They are
Kippurim was
still
not mechaper.
chayav because it was vadai. Yes, okay.
Those were vadai. Ashamot tluyin. If you, so what's the word missing here is chayavei. Chayavei ashamot tluyin. People who are obligated to bring ashamot tluyin who didn't bring them, but they go through Yom Kippurim. After that, they're patur. They don't have to bring their asham talui anymore. And why? Rashi says the Yom Kippurim mechaper alehem. And the reason is explained in Kritot, which we're not going to look at today. But okay. So we have two answers to our original question. And our original question was when the Mishnah says, Fataot be'ashamot vadai mechaprin, we wanted to know the status of Hasham Talui, because Hasham Talui is left out. It implies that it's not Mechaper. So in the first instance, we said it implies it's not Mechaper, but we know from the Torah that Hasham Talui is Mechaper. And so he said, okay, but it's not the same kind of kapara. It's not a kapara gemura. And here we say it's also different because Yom Kippurim can be, there is something else besides bringing the Hasham Talui itself that could be mechaper for someone who's chayav and Hasham talui, and that other thing is Yom Kippurim itself. Okay.
Now that there is no Beit Mikdash, there is no difference between Hasham Vadai and Hasham Talui because both Yom Kippur mechaper al shnehem because you have no other way.
We have no other way. So, and yes, and we'll look at that. The Rambam, of course, talks about that in the first parak of Hilchot Tshuva. One second. But for the moment, let's continue on in the Gemara. So, Paul, why don't you read the next part? Mitav Yom Kippurim.
Mitav Yom Kippurim mechapchim im hatshuva, im hatshuva, im bifnei atzman lo. Well, death and Yom Kippurim. If you get to Yom Kippurim, yes, or if you die before, you get kapara, but you get atonement under the condition that you make tshuva.
Mm-hmm. So that's the Mishnah.
Yeah.
It's just quoting our Mishnah.
That's
so
the Mishnah.
And then the Gemara.
If you do tshuva, yes. Bifnei atzman, Does this mean בלי תשובה? לא.
Yeah, right.
בפני עצמן.
What's בפני עצמן?
בלי תשובה. לא יודע.
No, on their own, I think.
Yeah, on their own.
Yeah, and what specifically what's it referring to that's on their own without tshuva?
Death or Yom Kippur, Yom Kippurim.
No.
Right. Okay. So in other words, I read the Gemara like this, and we quote the Mishnah. It says Mitav Yom Kippurim mechaprim imat tshuva, and so the Gemara is saying Mitav Yom Kippurim im hatshuva in hem kein mechaprim. V'mitav Yom Kippurim bifnei atzman, lo, they're not mechaper. Okay, that's what the Gemara's diuk, right? It's a diuk lashon. It's just saying that's the implication. So I also want to point out that Paul, in his translation, so he said. Mitav Yom Kippurim mechaprim im hatshuva. I think I'm quoting you that you say that means on the condition that you did tshuva. And that's
Tshuva,
the way we
yes.
that's the way we read the Mishnah to begin with. That is,
Yes.
if you did tshuva before you died, or you did tshuva before Yom Kippurim, then you get kapara, and it is the assumption then is that tshuva is a necessary component. You don't get kapara without tshuva. You need that the tshuva is necessary. So now, Paul, you can continue reading. Nema.
Nema dela kerabi detanya. Kerabi.
Rabbi, which is Rabbi Yehuda Nasi.
Okay. Okay.
Detanya.
רבי אומר, על כל עבירות שבתורה, בין עשה תשובה, בין לא עשה תשובה, יום הכיפורים מכפר. Oh, says the opposite.
Okay.
כן.
חוץ.
מכפר. חוץ, מפורק עול, ומגלה פנים בתורה, ומפר ברית בשר. שאם עשה תשובה יום הכיפורים מכפר, ואם לא עשה תשובה, אין יום הכיפורים מכפר. אפילו תימה רבי, כן, פוליט.
Oh, I'm sorry. אפילו תימה רבי.
אפילו תימה רבי, תשובה בעיה יום הכיפורים, יום הכיפורים לבעיה תשובה.
Okay, so there's a lot to say here. So first, let's just go back here. So we had our question. First of all, we start off with not a question, but again with a diuk, right? We're reading the Mishnah carefully, and we understand the implication of the Mishnah is that Itah and Yom Kippurim are mechaper only if you did tshuva prior.
If you did tshuva, it's an addition.
Right, so that's the way.
Let's say it was forgotten in the psukim.
What do you mean?
Before they didn't mention it, so here you add it. You add this mention.
Wait, I'm missing something. You added what? What did we add?
Hello?
No, I
Hello?
heard you. Wait, can everybody hear me? Yeah?
Yeah.
Wait, Paul's having a hard time. Paul, you can't hear us. Something happened to his sound. Let's give it a minute. Paul, tell us when you. Uh-oh. No? You can't hear us?
Now
No.
I hear.
Oh, and now I hear you. Okay. You hear us?
Yes, I don't know what happened.
All right.
Okay.
Your computer needs to do tshuva, is what that's
No,
the.
it's not my computer. It's Bluetooth. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, okay.
Mhm.
So we started off with this diuk. So this wasn't a question. This was just saying that when I read the Mishnah, this is the implication. The Mishnah implies that Mitan Yom Kippurim will be mechaper as long as you did tshuva. But by themselves, mitav Yom Kippurim. In other words, if you died without doing tshuva, or if you participated, experienced Yom Kippurim without doing tshuva, you won't get kapara. So then the Gemara says, okay, that's what the Mishnah implies. So the Gemara says, Nema de lo karabi. So, Paul, do you know what that means?
No, I don't know the words, but I understand what. There is a problem with Rabbi who
Okay,
says something,
who says
who
something
has
different?
another opinion about the tshuva or another diuk about
Okay,
the
so what's
tshuva.
Nema mean? Anybody?
Let
You
us
already
say,
said it, I forget it.
It's okay, Michael Schwartz, go ahead.
let us say,
Let us say, right? So Nema, as we've seen before, introduces a an assumption that we could make. Nema, so let's say Dilo Karabi, that it's not like Rabbi. What's not like Rabbi?
Rabbi says that you don't need
What's not
tshuva.
like Rabbi? What's not like Rabbi? Before we get to
רבי
Rabbi.
אומר על כל העבירות שבתורה בין
No,
עשה
no, no. That you're.
תשובה
I'm
ובין
doing.
לא עשה
Rega.
תשובה,
Paul.
יום
This
הכיפורים
is a
מכפר.
methodological issue here. I want you to read it. What is Nema de lo
איזה
Karabi?
problem?
What are we saying is not like Rabbi? Before we get to Rabbi, we don't know yet what Rabbi said. But the Gemara introduces this by saying, let's say this is not like Rabbi. What's not like Rabbi?
the previous statement.
Well,
The answer to the question of why
no. What's
why
not like
Shabbatai.
Rebbe is our Mishnah. Let's say our Mishnah is not like Rebbe. That's the question. The Mishnah says, "Mitav Yom Kippurim mechaprim tshuva," and I made a diuk, and I explained what that meant. And now I'm going to say, Nema. So let's say then that our Mishnah is not like Rebbe. Why would I say our Mishnah is not like Rebbe? Now, Paul, you can say, because I learned in a Braita that Rebbe said, what did Rebbe say? Now tell us what Rebbe said. Uh-oh, Paul, you still with us? Ah, oi. No? You can't hear us? Anything? Hello? Jerusalem calling? No?
No, okay, now it's okay.
Okay, now it's okay. Okay, so this is the Gemara's question. Let's say, or it's a point they're asking, but it's essentially a question. We learned in the Mishnah such and such. Let's say that our Mishnah is not like Rebbe, meaning it doesn't agree with Rebbe's opinion. So now, Rebbe, what did Rebbe say? Now we can say, so what did Rebbe say that seems to contradict our Mishnah? So now, Paul, what did he say? Al kol averot shebatorah.
On all the
transgressions.
Averot, sins, how do you say Averot? The past,
Sins is fine.
sins, yes, of the Torah. And whether you did tshuva or whether you didn't do tshuva, Yom Kippurim gives atonement. So apparently you don't need to do tshuva to get atonement on Yom Kippurim, according to Rabbi.
According to Rabbi, and so what is so now we understand when the Gemara said Neema de lo Rabbi. Let's say our Mishnah isn't like Rabbi. Why? Why is our Mishnah not like Rabbi?
Because our Mishnah says one has to do tshuva.
Our Mishnah says in order to get kapara with Yom Kippurim, then you have to do tshuva. That's the way we read our Mishnah. And Rabbi says, no, I'll call. So even though after that, the Gemara differentiated, said, well, actually, there's some Averot, or Averot Kalot, where you do tshuva and you don't need Yom Kippurim. But on Averot Chamurot, you do need Yom Kippurim. You need tshuva with Yom Kippurim. And so now Rabbi says, no, I'll call Averot Shabbat Torah, meaning Ben Kalot, Ben Chamurot. He doesn't differentiate. He says, all Averot in the Torah, whether or not you did tshuva, Yom Kippurim is mechaper. Chutz mi, now the chutz mi is not so important to us immediately, but we want to learn it anyway. So what except for three things, Rebbe says, there are three things for which you apparently
need tshuva nevertheless, yes.
You need tshuva nevertheless. So what are the three things? Porek ol. What's porek ol?
Something that doesn't do any mitzvot.
Casting off the yoke.
Okay, so literally means casting off the yoke or removing the yoke. And what's the yoke?
The mitzvot.
The mitzvot, right? If you remove from yourself the obligation of the mitzvot. Let's look at Rashi. Rashi says, "Chutz miporek ol, kofer b'kadosh baruch hu." The ol is altogether not just the Torah, but the existence of God Himself. Porek ol means that you've removed from yourself any obligation to God. What's the next one? Migale panim b'Torah. So what does that mean literally? Migale panim b'Torah.
Well, it probably has got some technical meaning.
No,
you think
but what does it mean literally?
Like that, but I don't know what they mean.
What do the words mean? Just what do the words mean? Migale panim. Ligalot.
If I finds out that there are different ways to look at the Torah or something like this.
No, you're going beyond the simple. What's just the simple meaning? Migale is to reveal or to expose, and panim means face.
Sides.
It can also mean. It can also mean.
Panim lecham, no?
So literally means that if you reveal, you could say it means if you reveal the face of the Torah, or if you reveal sides in the Torah, okay, I'll accept that. So what does Rashi say?
That's strange because all the comments they give they begale panim.
No.
Somebody gives this comment and another one gives another comment.
No, so it's not so that's what I'm saying. You don't read immediately into the secondary meanings. Migale panim is to expose the face of. So Rashi explains, Doresh et Torah lignai. If you learn the Torah out in such a way that it's to a degradation of the Torah, kigon, like Menashe. שהיה דורש באגדות של דופי, לא היה לו למשה לכתוב אלא ותמנע הייתה פילגש. I apologize, I was going to bring, this is a reference to a Gemara in Sanhedrin and I don't remember the daf, so I'm not going to bring it right now, but b'li neder, I'll bring it next week. But the idea of migale panim b'Torah is this idea that you darshan that you're darshaning the Torah in an improper way.
So מגלה פנים שליליות.
Yesh lomar.
I mean, could one maybe say that not simply in an improper way, but also a self-serving way?
What did we read that would make you think that? Is that just something that popped in your head, or is that something you see in the text?
Well, I mean, it brings in the example of Menashe, who certainly did,
Okay, so you know what? I see what you're saying. So I'm going to hold on that. Let's wait until I bring the reference for Menashe. For the moment, it means that you're darshaning the Torah I'm going to stick with my explanation. It means you're darshaning the Torah improperly. We can sharpen that next week when we look into it a little more further. And what's the third thing? Mefer brit basar. If you undo the covenant of
is
the
this
flesh.
the Brit Milah? Does he mean the Brit Milah? That you
Yes, so that's the Brit Basar.
To your sons?
So, umefer Brit Basar Milah. It refers to Milah. That the Brit Basar, right? Al Britcha shechatamta bivsarenu, right? We say in benching. So Milah, Masechet Shavot Yalif La Mikrai. And in Masechet Shavot Yalif La, we learn it from Psukim. So they're also b'li neder. We can digress a little bit and look at these separately, but the point is, in our context, Rebbe says that all of the averot b'Torah, whether you did tshuva or not, Yom Kippurim is mechaper. So you cannot do tshuva and wait for Yom. It sounds like, right? You cannot do tshuva. You could just wait for Yom Kippurim. And if you go through Yom Kippurim, you get kapara, except for these three averot of porek ol, megale panim b'Torah, umefer brit basar. That in those, im asat tshuva Yom Kippurim mechaper, v'im lo asat tshuva in Yom Kippurim mechaper. So that's our point. That is, the point is that the Gemara is saying. The point is that the Gemara is saying that apparently Rebbe doesn't agree with our Mishnah, right? Nema Deloka Rebbe. We're going to say that our Mishnah doesn't go like Rebbe. And of course, you could say, yeah. In other words, even though Rebbe is the Orech of the Mishnah, he is the redactor of the Mishnah, but we know it's not the only place where in the final redaction of the Mishnah that Rebbe leaves his own opinion out. You could make that, so that could be an answer, but we already understand from the introduction of this question, from the word nema, let us say, it's leading us into an assumption or a presupposition which ultimately we're going to reject. But we could say, if I learned our Mishnah, and then I learned this Braita of Rabbi Omer, I would say, okay, our Mishnah says you do need to do tshuva for Yom Kippurim to be mechaper, and Rabbi says you don't. So I could just leave it that, yeah, Rabbi doesn't agree with our Mishnah. But what does the Gemara say? Michael Werner, you can read the last three lines. Afilu tema Rabbi.
Afilu tema Rabbi. Whoops, we're there. Afilu tema Rabbi. Teshuvah ba'aya Yom Kippurim. Yom Kippurim lo abaya teshuvah.
Okay. Afilu tema Rabbi. What do the words mean?
Even Rabbi would say.
No, afilu tema, even if you say. Tema is you.
Oh, right. Say. Okay. Right. Of course. Okay. Right. Even if you would say.
Just what the words mean.
Even if you would even if you would say Rabbi,
Okay.
this is addressing Rabbi then.
No. Just translate the words, and
Okay.
then we'll fill it.
Even if you would say Rabbi, tshuva precedes Yom Kippurim.
No.
No.
What does Baya mean? Anybody?
Needs, requires.
Requires.
Tshuva requires.
So tshuva requires Yom Kippurim. Yom Kippurim does not require tshuva.
Okay. So now, afilu tema Rabbi. What does that mean now in the context of our question? What was our nema? What were we go? What did we say we could say?
We could say that tshuva.
No. We could say regarding Rebbe that what? Or regarding our Mishnah that what?
You could say that the Mishnah doesn't go like Rebbe, or Rebbe doesn't hold like the Mishnah.
Right. Nema deloka Rebbe. We could say it that our Mishnah doesn't go like Rebbe. Now we say afilu tema Rabbi. So what does that mean?
You could say the Mishnah goes like Rebbe.
Oh,
No.
even if you say that the Mishnah goes like Rebbe, just like Nema deloka Rebbe meant, we could say that our Mishnah does not go like Rebbe. Now we'll say no. Afilu tema Rebbe. Even if you'll say our Mishnah does go like Rebbe, so then how do I understand? In other words, I have to modify either my understanding of the Mishnah or my understanding of Rabbi, because the way I've learned them until now, they contradict. So how do I reconcile the contradiction? Tshuva baya Yoma Kippurim. Yoma Kippurim lo baya tshuva. So tshuva requires Yoma Kippurim, but Yoma Kippurim does not require tshuva. So what understanding am I changing? What am I modifying in my understanding from before?
It would be the second clause that Yom Kippurim does not require tshuva, whereas before.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Continue. So until now, it seems that Yom Kippurim does require tshuva.
Where did we say that Yom Kippurim needs tshuva?
Well, certainly for the Hamorot.
No. Where? Between Rebbe and the Mishnah. Where?
Oh, the Mishnah said that.
The Mishnah. That's the way, right? That's the way we learned the Mishnah. The Mishnah said, Mita, we're leaving Mita aside. V'yom Kippurim mechaprimi matshuva. So, as I pointed out, when Paul translated, the way he translated, the way we all assumed that what the Mishnah meant is that Yom Kippurim is mechaper, provided that you do tshuva. That tshuva is a requirement that goes with that goes with Yom Kippurim. That Yom Kippurim won't be mechaper without tshuva. And now, in my modified understanding, what am I saying? Tshuva baya Yom Kippurim. Tshuva needs Yom Kippurim. What does that mean?
That tshuva, even if you've done tshuva, it's you won't get kapara until Yom Kippurim.
Oh, right. So that very good. So what does it mean? Tshuva needs Yom Kippurim. That if you do tshuva, you won't get kapara until Yom Kippurim, until you go through Yom Kippurim. But the other is not true. Yom Kippurim lo baya tshuva. Yom Kippurim does not need tshuva. So how am I now reading this line in the Mishnah? In other words, what we did is we modified the Gemara saying I could read the Mishnah and understand it differently. Until now, I understood it that Yom Kippurim mechaprimi matshuva meant that tshuva is a necessary prerequisite for Yom Kippurim to be mechaper. And now what am I saying?
If you've done tshuva, then you know, you will get kapara either upon death or upon Yom Kippurim.
But not what? I'm sorry, but that's correct. And then what does that tell me though about Yom Kippurim itself?
Yom Kippurim gives you kapara whether you've done tshuva or not.
Yeah. In other words, so now I can say Yom Kippurim mechaprim im hatshuva, that the way I'm reading that is that the way I'm reading that is the way Michael Werner explained that if you do tshuva, then Yom Kippurim will be mechaper. Right? So tshuva requires Yom Kippurim. But then the implication will be that if you didn't do tshuva, Yom Kippurim could still be mechaper. So this sounds, and I see Michael Schwartz. You want to say?
So if I understand correctly, the bifnei atzman doesn't refer to Yom Kippurim; it refers to tshuva.
No. In other words, here, this bifnei atzman. No, when we ask the question, we're assuming the first reading. So in that reading, then that would be in the initial reading that mitav Yom Kippurim mechaprim ima tshuva in. So it means that tshuva is a necessary requirement, which implies that bifnei atzman mitav Yom Kippurim, no, they don't need tshuva. I'm rejecting that diuk. In other words, I haven't changed. The diuk is still a diuk, right? It's still a way of reading the Mishnah. But now I'm saying I don't necessarily have to make that diuk. I don't necessarily have to read the Gemara, the Mishnah, in that way. Because here, bifnei atzman lo it's true. That's the way I think the Mishnah. That's what I think the Mishnah means. Because that's what I think the Mishnah means, that's why I say Nema de Loka Rabbi. That's why I say, let's say then that if that's true, then the Mishnah doesn't go like Rabbi. And then in the end, I say, no, even if I could even say that the Mishnah does go like Rabbi, but I'm going to read the Mishnah differently, and I'm going to no longer hold by that original diuk. And now, what does it mean? That im hatshuva im hatshuva is not the necessary prerequisite for Yom Kippurim, but it's the opposite. That im hatshuva means that if I do tshuva, then Yom Kippurim will be mechaper. So I want to stop here for a minute because it sounds very strange. The whole thing. I'm just going to put it out. It sounds very strange that the Mishnah should say such a thing in such a way. That when we learned Rebbe was much more, let's say, much easier to understand. He just says it's plain, right? All the avarot b'Torah, whether you did tshuva, whether you don't tshuva, Yom Kippurim is mechaper. So then, of course, in Rebbe, we can ask a question. Okay, so then what is tshuva for? Why do I need tshuva if I have Yom Kippurim? So let's think about that for a moment. What would Rebbe answer to that question? What might he say?
Well, if we're going to think about tshuva in light of, if tshuva is like what the Rambam said about it, meaning that even if you're in precisely the same position, you'll never do the same thing again. Basically, doing tshuva sort of ensures that you won't do it again.
Okay,
it implies a commitment not to do it. It implies for sort of recognition that you did wrong, and then a will not to do it again, a commitment not to do it again.
Okay, so what you're pointing out, which is very important, of course, there are qualitative differences between Yom Kippurim, which is to live through or experience in some way that time, that 25, 26-hour period, and actively taking, going through this process of tshuva, which would seem to be a process whereby you're going to change something about yourself. So they're qualitatively different altogether. So when so tshuva has, you could say, so if I may, I could say based on what Michael Werner is saying, tshuva has this qualitative edge, as it were, over Yom Kippurim, which is that not only does it give you kapara, but it will also help to safeguard you from sinning in the future. Whereas Yom Kippurim gives you kapara, but it's not necessarily a safeguard for you in the future because maybe you didn't do anything to change yourself. So but ma mechaneh mishutaf, what do they have in common? They both give you kapara. In other words, if you say to Rebbe, so why do I need tshuva? He could say, if you want kapara now, so then you can do tshuva. But you would say, actually, I have to modify that. But according to Rebbe, even if you do tshuva now, you still have to wait for Yom Kippurim. Right? You would still have to wait for Yom Kippurim. But I think that, okay, so I'm gonna leave it for the moment with the emphasis that Michael Werner had, that the process of doing tshuva is qualitatively different than the process of going through Yom Kippurim, in that it should safeguard you from sinning in the future. I'm going to, one second. This is actually where I wanted to stop this week. And that this is a good place to stop because I want to dig into this question of how we understand Rebbe, right? Because what Rebbe is saying, I mean, I'll speak for myself, but it does seem to go against the Mishnah, and the Mishnah was something that maybe, if I may be so bold, accords more with our sensitivities. That is, we would, I think when we read the Mishnah, we understand that that the Torah wants us to do tshuva because of the things that Michael Werner is alluding to, because it's going to change something within ourselves, and that will keep us from sinning in the future. And when I read Rebbe, it seems, it feels like, well, if you just wait long enough till Yom Kippurim, you'll be off the hook, and you don't have to do any kind of internal change. So it's difficult. It seems it's conceptually challenging. So I'll just point out, and we'll look at this a little more next week. And Beli Neder also, I mentioned Rav Soloveitchik's Al HaTshuva. Rav Soloveitchik specifically talks about Rebbe, and he has his own perush on how he understands Rebbe. But I believe, if I remember, I looked at it last week, that he does allude to this. This is on in the regular printed, the Gemara, there's Tosfos, and then on some Masechtot, including Yoma, at the bottom of the page or around the sides, you have Tosfot Yeshanim, which is a different version of Tosfot. And I'll just read the beginning of Tosfot Yeshanim, and that's where we'll stop. So Tosfos here is quoting. Wait, did I change the screen? Yes, I did. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I can make that bigger. Right. So tshuva needs Yom Kippurim. Yom Kippurim lo bay tshuva. Yom Kippurim doesn't need tshuva. So now Tosfos just is reading this first part, and he says, V'im tomar, so if you say, Hachamashma diyoma kippurim ikar, if you say that now it sounds like Yom Kippurim is the main thing. In other words, until now, I thought Tshuva was the main thing. And now I've turned it around. And I'm saying the Ikar, the main thing, in other words, the principle which is going to give you Kapara is Yom Kippurim. So if you'll say now this is implied, the Yom Kippurim is the Ikar, Vafilu Hachi Ka'amar im tshuva, and nonetheless, it still says with tshuva, meaning that if Yom Kippurim is so powerful, why do I need tshuva at all? Why does the Mishnah still include im tshuva? V'kasha mikan al mashra gil Rabbeinu Yaakov lomar. So now this is difficult from this point. What Rabbeinu Yaakov was Rabbeinu Tam, Rashi's grandson. His name was Yaakov. Rabbeinu Yaakov was accustomed to saying the Talmud Torah tafel legabe derech eretz. The Talmud Torah is secondary to derech eretz. How does he know? Midiktani, because I learned the Mishnah, Yefei Talmud Torah im derech eretz. In other words, this is the same grammatical construction. I have X im X, something with something. So here we had Yom Kippurim im hatshuva, and now what am I saying? I'm saying that Yom Kippurim is the main thing, and im hatshuva is secondary. But Rabbeinu Yaakov, when he learned this Mishnah in Avot, he learned that Talmud Torah was secondary to Derech Eretz. And if I'm using the same grammatical construction, it should be that Talmud Torah is the main thing, and Derech Eretz is secondary. Alma, Derech Eretz Ikar. In other words, based on the way I'm learning the Gemara now, here, about Yom Kippurim Matshuva, I should say that Derech Eretz is the main thing, and Talmud Torah is secondary to it. Okay, I'm going to stop here because now from here on in, it's going to get a little bit more technical. He's going to bring other examples that I don't want to go into, but I'll just skip to where he gives an answer. Yesh lomar, you could say, Dahachi ka'amar. This is the way I will read the Mishnah. Ima tshuva shasa kvar, with the tshuva that was done already, tzarich Yom Kippurim. You need Yom Kippurim. Ve'eno ba lomar shetzarich shnehem. It's not coming to say that you need both of them. I could just say that, yes, if you did tshuva, you need Yom Kippurim, but you don't need, but you can have Yom Kippurim without tshuva. Inami mishum mita. The behed yatana im hatshuva, the tshuva ikar, gabe mita. Or else I could say because of mita, which is the first thing in the Mishnah, right? Mita v'yom kippurim mechaprim, im hatshuva, because there I could say there, mita without the tshuva, the hedyatan imat tshuva. There, I could say what the Mishnah is really learning is mita imat tshuva is mechaper. The behedyatan imat tshuva, the tshuva ikar. There, it's clear that tshuva is the ikar vis-a-vis mita. Because why? Because you can't have it after mita. So it must be that tshuva is essential. All right, I'm going to stop here because it's getting a little confusing. This is some food for thought, though. And we'll look at Rav Soloveitchik next week. And if I remember, which I will try to do, I don't have that in digital form, but I can make a copy. I can make a scan, I can send you the text. It's not very long. It comes at the end of a longer discussion, but what he says is not very long. So I think we'll do that next week. And with that, that's it for tonight. Any last questions or comments? Okay, you can all go to sleep now.
Thank you. Good night.
לילה טוב.
Laila Do, bye bye.
תודה רבה.
תודה לך.